game. So with that, let's get into our game of the week, Georgia versus Tennessee. Obviously, the SEC is incredibly competitive this year. Let's talk about the Bulldogs first. Cole, what have you liked out of Georgia to start off this season?
Yeah, I mean, their defense has looked good, right, so far. I think there's a lot of talk right now surrounding Gunnar Stockton, their new quarterback. Are they better off with him, or, were they better off with Carson Beck? I think time will tell. I think Carson Beck's been better this year for Miami than Gunnar Stockton's been for Georgia. But, I think their defense is – one of the best, right? And we'll get a little more into that. But, they got a tough matchup this week against Tennessee. And, Tennessee's been rolling on offense. I know they've only played one game, but they put up over 70 points, right? And, this game is at Neyland Stadium in Tennessee. The Bulldogs are going to have to go on the road. So it's going to be a good first test for them to see if, is Georgia going to be atop the SEC this year, or, is Tennessee going to make that jump? So excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, Georgia took this last matchup between these two teams 31-17. But Jake, where can the Volunteers learn from their last meeting with the Bulldogs here and get a win?
Oh, man. I think, so full disclosure, I picked Georgia as well. So this is not a statement I necessarily identify with, but there's a lot to like about Tennessee's kind of new offensive gig, right? It's easy to freeze up when you lose Nico and say, "Oh crap, what do we do here?" Right? And I think did that cost them a couple early preseason, spots in the AP? Sure, I think it probably did in our poll as well, right? But I think. Joey Aguilar looks pretty good so far, right? I don't think the consensus is he didn't, really do much to turn many heads at App State last year. But, I think Tennessee system seems very quarterback friendly, right? And I think you're seeing that with Aguilar here. That's what, if they're going to leverage anything, they're going to have to dig deep into the bag here and try to get past this pesky Georgia defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate to spoil picks, but two of us have Georgia money line. Two of us have Georgia for against the spread. I have Georgia -3.5 versus Tennessee. I want to have us get into our picks here quick, because I do want to. I have a point about it. But Cole, could you give your pick for this game?
Yeah, I'm taking Georgia 3.5. So I got them with the spread. And look, no disrespect to Tennessee, right? I think I said before they only played one game, but they did beat Syracuse as well earlier in the year. Look, they're the second ranked offense, Tennessee, in all of FBS. They're averaging over 600 yards per game. Joey Aguilar's looked really good. But when you play Eastern Tennessee and you play Syracuse, that's different than playing the Georgia Bulldogs on defense. And, look at last year's game, right? This was a highlighted matchup going into that game last year, and Georgia kind of smacked them around. I think Kirby Smart, he's a defensive mastermind. I think Gunnar Stockton will do enough on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think that Tennessee's going to be able to put up the amount of points that they have been against other teams. And I think that Georgia is able to cover on the road. So I trust Georgia's defense more than Tennessee's offense, just because of, history and coaching expertise. And, that's why I'm taking Georgia to cover.
Yeah. And Jake, so again, I brought this up because you and Tondo also took the Dogs, but you took the money line. Is there anything about this spread that you feel like you were just much more comfortable taking the Dogs straight up than taking them with the points?
Yeah, it's I literally think that's the difference between, this being in Georgia versus, being in Island Stadium. So, yeah, I mean, Knoxville's a hostile environment. We've seen it. We've seen what happens when Tennessee beats Alabama. They pick the field goals up and or the goalposts up, and they throw them in the river in Knoxville.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like that's it for me, right? Because I really, you got to respect the way that Tennessee has come out so far. But for me, it's literally just that Georgia they are the top dogs, no pun intended, defensively. Until proven otherwise, right? Unless Tennessee goes and lays out a bunch of points on them, like they are. It's so hard for me to look at that defense and just say, "Yep, all right, no, Tennessee's gonna, have an easy way with a rookie quarterback for all intents and purposes at Tennessee." And yeah, like I know there were some questions, right? So maybe some injuries, but I think Elijah Griffin has stood out to me. They're reading a CBS article. They're saying he looks like a future star, right? Which he does, right? Like he's a true freshman. He's 6'4", 310, and he's carving guys up on the defensive line, right? So great spotlight opportunity for this kid to put a little pressure on Joey Aguilar, and. You've got their inside. It's all about the defensive line for Georgia. They've always had stars there, right? And they've got Jordan Hall and Christian Miller this year. It's tough shoes to fill when you had Jalen Carter in there beforehand, but these guys have done a really good job overall, right? So it's just so hard for me in conclusion to overlook like Kirby Smart's defensive packages that he's gonna throw at Tennessee here, and just I think it's Georgia all the way here, but by a thin margin.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like we're all rocking with the Dawgs here. It's going to be a very important game for both of these teams, kind of setting the tone for the SEC. I mean, right now we've only seen one game in conference, and that was Ole Miss versus Kentucky, where Ole Miss kind of took this one. I wanted to look at both of these teams' remaining schedules after this. So Georgia next week, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I think depending on how this game goes, they're going to be in our next game of the week where they take on number 19 Alabama. Their SEC schedule continues where they've got Kentucky at Auburn, who has cracked the AP top 25. Then they're home against Ole Miss, home against Florida, at Mississippi State, and then finish it up against Texas. Tennessee, following the game against Georgia, they skip a week in terms of SEC play, and they host UAB, but then they're back and they travel to go play Mississippi State, host Arkansas, head to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. Then they are at Kentucky, and then host Oklahoma, and then they finish their schedule out at Florida and versus Vanderbilt. For you guys, I feel like I've asked this question before with some of these other games, but I mean, who would you rather be in terms of your remaining schedule, the team to lose this weekend? I mean, who do you think has the best chance at recovering from a loss? I'm going to say Georgia, just because I think, that game against Alabama could be great for them to kind of clean it up. But I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were.
Yeah, I'd say Georgia as well for right now. But I mean, look, they still have a lot of good teams on their schedule, right? They got to play Texas later on this year. Yep. They have Auburn in a couple of weeks, who's ranked right now, Ole Miss. So, by no means does Georgia have an easy schedule from here on out. So, but I do like them against Bama next week. We'll get into that next week's show. But, I mean, I think I'd rather be Georgia right now than Tennessee.